He came into our lives when we were barely old enough to understand what family really meant. Darren wasn't blood, but you wouldn't have known it. He and James met in middle school, two scrawny boys who shared a bus seat and quickly, everything else. By the time we got married, I'd known Darren almost as long as I'd known James. At our wedding, he stood next to my husband with a hand on his shoulder, grinning like it was his day too. Darren helped us move into our first place, a cramped, two-bedroom with walls thin enough to hear the neighbors sneeze. He painted the nursery when I was too tired and swollen with our first baby to lift a brush. He came over on weekends, not just to drink beer or watch the game, but to fix things James kept putting off. The squeaky back door, the cracked grout in the shower. He brought food when my mother passed, sat in the kitchen like a shadow, saying, "Nothing but staying close, just the way you hope people will." Our daughter called him Uncle D before she could even say Daddy clearly. He bought her first bike, a pink one with tassels, even though James said she wasn't ready. When she fell and scraped her knee, it was Darren who cleaned the cut, whistling to distract her while she cried. James and I laughed later that night, half teasing, half grateful. "You'd think she was his," I said. James just nodded and smiled. Every holiday, he showed up before anyone else and left after everyone had gone. Thanksgiving, he carved the turkey. On Christmas, he'd bring the loudest, most annoying toys. On my birthday, he brought flowers. "From the both of them," he'd say. I believed him. I had no reason not to. In photos, he's always somewhere, in the middle of us. Arms slung around James, one hand on my shoulder. He was there for everything. When James got laid off, Darren brought over a toolbox and said, "Let's build something instead." They spent 3 months in the garage making furniture from old pallets, even sold a few. I remember watching them through the kitchen window, covered in sawdust, laughing so hard they had to lean on each other to stay upright. We had our arguments, the kind you have when someone is always around. Once I told James I felt like we never had time to ourselves. He said, "He's family. You don't shut out family." I let it go. And really, I loved Darren too, in the way you love a piece of your story. He was part of ours, deeply stitched into the fabric. Back then, if someone had asked me what made our little world feel full, I would have said Sunday dinners, the way James and Darren laughed like kids, and the sound of my daughter's feet running down the hall. We were lucky. At least, that's what I thought. It was one of those late summer evenings that hung in, the air like a held breath, heavy with heat, thick with memory. The kind of night where everything feels golden and slow, where the kids stay up too late chasing fireflies and the grown-ups linger around flickering citronella candles. We'd planned the barbecue 2 weeks earlier, just a small one for close friends and family. Darren was, of course, the first to show up, carrying a cooler and a crooked grin. The grill sizzled, smoke curling into the sky like lazy ribbons. James stood with Darren, beer bottles clinking in rhythm as they flipped burgers and swapped the same stories they'd been telling since high school. I was in the kitchen when I first noticed it. A pause too long. A silence that seemed to echo after the punchline of a joke. I glanced out the window and saw Darren looking at me, just for a second too long. Not the look of a brother or an old friend. Something else. I turned away before I could place it. Laughter floated through the house, but under it was a low vibration of something uneasy. My daughter was dancing barefoot in the grass, her curls bouncing, music from an old speaker skipping between songs. James was quiet that night. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He leaned into Darren's words like he was trying to catch something hidden beneath them. When I asked him if he was all right, he brushed my hand off with a quick, "Yeah, fine," and disappeared to refill the ice. Later, the lights strung along the backyard flickered in the wind. The air had cooled just enough for cardigans and drawn-in shoulders. I sat with a plate of food I wasn't hungry for, watching Darren talk to my sister near the fence. His voice low, his body turned slightly too close. His eyes flicked to mine again. Not casual, not kind, calculated. I smiled because that's what you do when you can't name what's wrong. James returned and stood behind me without speaking. I felt the tension in his hands as they rested on my shoulders, fingers digging in just enough to feel like a warning. He was watching too. The air was thick with things unsaid. When the party ended, people left in clumps, yawning and waving. Darren lingered. He always lingered, but this time it felt like he was waiting for something. He helped me carry dishes inside, brushing past too closely in the narrow hallway. James stood by the sink, drying plates that didn't need drying. Silence filled the room like smoke. Darren said, "See you," too softly, and James didn't answer. Just stared at him, hard. After the door closed, James said nothing. He just wiped his hands on a towel, tossed it on the counter, and walked upstairs without looking back. I stood there, surrounded by empty glasses, half-melted ice, and the kind of silence that isn't peaceful. It's loaded. Something had shifted. It hadn't broken yet, but it had cracked, and I could feel the air rushing in. The morning light came in gray, filtered through the blinds like smoke. The house was quiet in that unnatural way, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears. I woke alone. James's side of the bed was cold, already made, like he hadn't slept there at all. I found him downstairs at the kitchen table, staring at nothing with a cup of coffee that hadn't been touched. His eyes were red, not from crying but from not sleeping. He didn't speak when I walked in. He didn't even look at me. Just sat there with his fingers wrapped tight around the mug, knuckles white. I asked if he was okay. He didn't answer. Right away. Then finally he said, he won't be coming around anymore. No explanation, no anger, just that flat finality that lands heavier than shouting. I wanted to ask why, but the words caught in my throat like they already knew they wouldn't matter. Darren didn't show up that Sunday, or the next. No texts, no calls. His usual memes that came like clockwork at 10 p.m., gone. It was like he vanished, neatly cut out from our lives. I kept waiting for someone to say something, to break the silence open, but all I got was more silence. James didn't bring him up. Neither did I. We circled around it like a broken glass on the floor no one wanted to touch. The change wasn't loud. It crept in slow, through little things. James started staying out late, not wildly, just late enough that I noticed. Dinner got quieter. He didn't reach for my hand when we watched TV. His laugh, once easy and full, became a rare thing. One morning I found a framed photo missing from the hallway wall, the one of the three of us at the lake, sunburned and smiling with beers in our hands. I didn't ask. I already knew. Our daughter asked where Uncle D was. I told her he was busy. She asked again 2 days later. I told her he moved away. I hated lying, but the truth didn't have words yet. She put one of her drawings on the fridge with his name scrawled in shaky letters across the top. I left it there for a week before taking it down. At night, I started dreaming in fragments, of bonfires and glances, of the sound of James walking, upstairs alone. I woke up with my chest tight, eyes burning from tears I never let fall. I replayed that night over and over, trying to find the exact moment it all cracked. A look? A word? Or was it something I missed entirely? The space he left behind wasn't physical, it was emotional. Like a room you keep walking into, forgetting why you came. I'd catch myself setting out 3 plates at dinner, folding laundry and pausing when I found a shirt that wasn't his or mine. There's no name for that kind of absence. Only the ache. Only the knowing. He was family. And then, he wasn't.